Hey guys, today I want to show you how Supervision Super Granulating Watercolors handle in a comic-esque application. So this is the field test for my Supervision Super Granulating colors, but it's not necessarily the way we might traditionally do a field test. My intention is not to mix colors. My intention is not to layer colors. These are super granulating colors and they really work best in a wet into wet application. And that is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to test out how well these might work if we were to use them for atmospheric comic backgrounds. So I have these Mairtini or Mairtini watercolor rounds. I reviewed these a while back. I got these on AliExpress. You guys can find out more about these in the videos linked in the description below. They are a mixed paper, so they are, I believe, 80% cotton, 20% cellulose. And I don't always love mixed watercolor papers, but when I'm painting 7-inch Cara, I do paint on Canson Ball watercolor paper, which is a cellulose paper that, while more affordable than attempting to paint watercolor pages on cotton rag paper, does handle a lot like an inexpensive cotton rag paper would, which makes it kind of ideal when you're painting hundreds of watercolor comic pages. So I think this is a pretty close analog. I think this will really give us a good idea of how these paints are going to handle. And spoiler, this is what I'm working on in the field test. So we're going to take a look at the colors on these two rows today. Some of these are half pans, some of these are tube watercolors that have been dried out in half pans. So I'm going to be using the half pans primarily, and I'll let you guys know what I think at the end of the video. And I know this is going to come up in the comments, so I want to preempt this. I know I have a lot of marks on my neck. My family recently adopted a kitten. He happens to have ringworm. Now I have ringworm. I'm treating it, we're treating it on him, but that's what the marks are. So just wanted to get that out there. Anyway, let's get to drawing, to inking, to wet into wet watercolor, and into painting. So just as a quick refresher, here are a few shots from the original unbox and swatch, the first time I tried Supervision watercolors, period, as well as the first time I tried the Supervision Super Granulating watercolors. I really was impressed by how fun these super granulating watercolors can be. The granulation shift is really impressive. The way I think they achieve this is by using a dye base or a very staining watercolor along with a very granulating watercolor. And this isn't unique to Supervision. Many other brands have super granulating watercolors, including Paul Rubens, Daniel Smith, Van Gogh, and Schmincke. I have not had a chance to try out the Schmincke super granulating watercolors yet. They're a little bit pricey. I've definitely got my eye on them. I'm just trying to narrow it down to which select few I'll try. Now, these are from my second unbox and swatch for super granulating watercolors. I really like the ones I ordered from AliExpress a while back, and I wanted to pick up a few more colors. It's really important to me that my watercolors can be dried out in a pan and reconstituted successfully. Not all watercolors can do this, huh? Daniel Smith's Mayan Blue, I'm looking at you. But so far, all of the Supervision super granulating watercolors that I have tried are able to be reconstituted from half pan, which for someone like me who needs the portability, the ability to clean it up, pick it up, put it away, that working from half pans has to offer, this is a huge boon. I have been reviewing a bunch of different Supervision watercolors here on the channel lately. These were all purchased from AliExpress using my own funds and funds generated from my Patreon. So if you enjoy my reviews, if you find them helpful, useful, and informative, a great way to help continue this sort of content, to help me continue to make this sort of content, is to join me over on Patreon. So this is me just assembling that super granulating palette, and now I am finally working on the start of our field test. So all of these tests were done on the Mairtini watercolor rounds. These are those 25% cotton, 75% German wood pulp rounds that you guys saw me review not too long ago. I just wrapped up the field test on that as well. And while I didn't necessarily love them for my floral watercolors, I did think these were a decent analog for the Canson Montwall that I used to paint my Cara pages. In fact, my main use case for these super granulating watercolors is for very easy to execute atmospheric backgrounds for my comic panels. So if you're new here and you're not familiar with my work, I'm a watercolor comic artist. I paint the watercolor comics 7-inch Cara. You guys can check it out for free. I hope you will check it out at 7inchcara.com. If you're a dead tree format kind of person like myself, if you're a book hoarder, I also have Volume 1 and Volume 2 available up on the Natto shop as well at nattosoup.com/shop. So if you enjoy my art, I hope you guys will check out my comic. So the main crux of this review is testing out how these would work for comic backgrounds. And to do that, I needed to create a large-ish field of, wet into wet to allow the granulation. I also needed to create some art that wouldn't utilize the super granulation. So that's what you guys actually see me doing here. I'm creating just different poses, different emotions for the main character of the comic, Cara. She's a Lilliputian girl, about 7 inches tall. So she's very small and very cute. And I am inking it using the Sakura Pigma FB brush pen. So what I like about this brush pen, other than, it's a brush pen, is the ink inside is both alcohol marker safe and waterproof, which makes it just a great all-rounder for an artist like myself. Now for all of these tests, I am penciling it and inking it, allowing the ink to cure to the paper, erasing those inks, securing it to a piece of chipboard so it doesn't buckle too much. We do get a little bit of buckling. And then the main area where all of these super granulating watercolors really seem to shine is by just letting them do their thing, dipping them in and letting those colors flow undisturbed, wet into wet. So that's what I am doing for all of these. I have the color name, the series, and the brand shown here. So if you see something you really like, you can find it, and I will do my best to link everything for you guys in the description below. This video isn't going to have a full transcript. I'm narrating as I go for this field test, but I'll be sure to put links to other watercolor tutorials and reviews that I think you guys will find useful, helpful, and informative in the description as well. So it would really mean a lot to me if before you click away, before you navigate off the video, when you're finished watching it, if you took a moment to check the description and see if there's anything that catches your eye or catches your interest. So most of these started their lives as tube watercolors that were then dried in half pans. The only exception is Cathedral Glass, which you guys will see here. This color is only available in half pan. And supervision is kind of weird like that. Some of the super granulating colors are only available in tubes, and then some are only available in half pans, and there isn't necessarily a lot of carryover. So generally, I would like to purchase a little bit less of a watercolor that I've never used before, because that's a lot of money to be spending on something you might not like, and they're not a sponsor for the channel. This is all purchased out of pocket. So as you guys can imagine, with the wrong product, that can end up with a lot of art supply waste that has to be rehomed. It's a lot of money spent. Fortunately, I did really like these, but I had hoped that more of these colors had been available as half pans. Now, if it's not for review purposes, I generally prefer to buy in tubes and then fill my own half pans. I've found over the years that is far more economical than buying half pan, half pan, half pan, half pan, because generally, even with a 5 milliliter tube, I can refill my half pan about 3 times, which makes it about a third of the cost when those 5 milliliter tubes are usually about the same cost as a half pan. With supervision, these are actually much larger tubes. These are 15 milliliter tubes. I had to check, sorry about that. So you're actually getting 3 times more paint than you would in a 5 milliliter tube. So if we can get 3 fills from a 5 milliliter tube, and this is 3 times more than that, I think we can get 9 fills per tube, which is really much more economical when you're painting as much as I paint. So I think professional grade watercolors are often worth the increase in price, because you end up using up less paint than you would with student grade watercolors over time. So if you're a long-term painter, if you see yourself painting for the next 10 years, professional grade will end up being more economical for you in the long run, and tubes may end up being more economical for you in the long run as well. So for this review, I ended up inking, drawing, and painting a lot of these little watercolor rounds. I want to say about 10 of them. And I basically, this project took a while. It took a couple of weeks to finish just painting everything. And I do actually have a big batch painting demonstration a little further in the video. So each day I would pencil and ink several of these watercolor rounds, allow them to cure, and then every day I would watercolor at least one round, like doing the wet into wet and then dabbing in the super granulating watercolor and allowing it to dry, while Hyperlapse was recording that dry just to demonstrate how drastically these shift from wet to dry. The change is really pretty mesmerizing, and I shared a lot of that over on my Instagram as part of my month-long Instagram challenge. So if you're curious about the nuts and bolts of this particular review, you can head on over to my Instagram at NatoSoup and check some of that out. But this took a while to complete. I was honestly getting kind of tired of it because when you're doing 10 plus of these, it starts to feel like it's just taking over your whole artistic life for a little while, especially because these are just meant to be a field test. They're not even particularly impressive. They're just these little watercolor rounds with different expressions featuring different colors. So while I enjoyed this one, I was kind of glad when it was finished too. But that said, I think these would make a really great, very easy watercolor background for watercolor comics. You can really get a lot of emotion. They're really quite evocative. Now, another friend suggested using these for clothing patterns. I definitely think that is a great use case for that. I think there are uses beyond what I'm proposing here. This is just what I thought of immediately when I saw them and I saw how they granulated. I was like, oh, that would make doing backgrounds for comics cooler and easier. I am all for that. So that's one of the reasons I bring up pretty frequently in my reviews that I'm a watercolor comic artist, because it really does change how I see watercolor. It changes how I approach watercolor, and it changes how I talk about watercolor. So you might see these as being amazing for florals, or great for doing water, or really super cool for brush calligraphy. You might have your own specific uses for these. These might make that little light bulb go off in your brain and make you feel super invigorated and excited and ready to grab your brush and paint. And that's great. I'm just approaching this from my own perspective. So I don't have a full set of the CAAM Supervision Super Granulating Watercolors. I think they've even released some new ones that I don't have. When I was purchasing these, I mostly went with colors that I thought would be useful for me in some way, shape, or form. But I do plan on ordering a few more as time progresses, and I'll check in with you guys with what I think of those colors as well. So this isn't meant to be indicative of the entire line. There might be some colors that are not quite as impressive as others, but I liked what I saw with the colors that I had. As you guys can imagine, buying all of this out of pocket does get kind of expensive. So when I'm reviewing these sort of things, I often can't afford to buy the whole line. I have to just go with what I think is a good representation that I will actually use, because again, these are art supplies. I'm not going to just throw them away. When I absolutely can't stand them, I will give them to someone else to use, but generally I try to make sure I only buy things I can actually see myself using. So there are 2 bonus colors in this review. There is also Daniel Smith Moonglow and Daniel Smith Lunar Blue. Like I said earlier, there are a lot of super granulating watercolors in Daniel Smith's line, and I believe Roman Schmalz's Aquarius line also has several super granulating colors. So this isn't meant to be indicative of all the super granulating colors out there ever. It's just kind of an overview. I wanted to test out a few of these. I wanted to see how they would work for me as a comic artist. Now, Cathedral Glass, which you guys saw earlier from Supervision, is very, very similar to Daniel Smith's Undersea Green. It's a little bit more blue. The green is a little bit cooler. I think Undersea Green has some really nice warm undertones in there as well. So they're very similar. They're not exactly the same. And I know that there are artists here on YouTube who also mix their own. I think Eve Bolt has done that, but let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about that. And I know there are channels on YouTube that literally just dupe these sort of convenience color mixes or these sort of super granulating mixes. So I am lazy. Well, that's not fair. I'm a watercolor comic artist, so I'm painting hundreds of panels, hundreds of faces, hundreds of pages. So not lazy. Efficiency is important and convenience is important, and I don't want to have to mix colors that I can easily buy, and then I might prefer the pre-made mix. Like, to me, Payne's Gray pre-mixed is very different from a Payne's Gray you mix yourself using ultramarine and burnt sienna. They're both really valuable. It just depends on what you're looking for your illustration. A pre-mixed convenience color tube Payne's Gray is going to be more regularly milled. You're not going to have the same granulation. You're not going to have the color shift between the ultramarine and the burnt sienna. But a Payne's Gray that you mix yourself is going to feel more lively. It's going to have some of that granulation going on. So there are pros and cons to buying pre-mixed things and mixing your own things. So this is always a your mileage may vary sort of situation. So here are all of our watercolor rounds with just the super granulating watercolor and the inked art. Now it's time to actually test these out and paint these the way I might paint a comic page. So I have these all laid out. They've all been secured to chipboard. There are 10 of them. So very similar to a comic page where I would be painting several characters on a page with several panels on a page. This is a pretty close facsimile. I could have generated a comic page to test this out. That might have also been fun, but doing the little watercolor rounds was a little bit more modular and a little bit easier for me to kind of finagle for this, if not as close of a one-to-one comparison. It definitely told me what I needed to know. And that is that these will indeed work for my comic art. They will indeed work for my comic pages. And I think they're going to add a really fun element while making the process a little bit easier for me, which I am all for. So generally when I'm painting comic pages, I'm using Canson Montval. It's a cellulose watercolor paper that handles a little bit more like a cotton rag. I really like it because it runs through my printer no problem, and it's quite economical, which, as I keep saying, when you're painting many, many, many pages, you definitely have to start thinking about that price tag and how you can get the best results without breaking the bank, because anybody who does webcomics knows it can be a bit of a crapshoot whether or not you become popular enough to cover your bills and expenses with your comic. So I'm always down for trying to find something that allows me to make the best comic possible without, totally bleeding me dry. So if you're curious about painting in batch, this is the way that I make doing watercolor comics and watercolor convention commissions back when I used to do that much more feasible. Basically, you mix up a whole lot of your skin tone and you just paint everybody in one go. You mix up a lot of your hair color and you just paint everyone in one go. It's just a lot of reusing what you already have mixed and utilizing that for as many characters as you can on the page. And I have a lot of tutorials here on the channel where I demonstrate my different methods for working in batch. I'm not necessarily saying I super duper recommend this as a working method for other artists. It's a method that works for me. But when I'm painting comic pages, I'm usually painting them at 11 by 14 inches. So they're fairly large, and I use those big gator boards, so they're even bigger. And I'm usually painting a scene of the comic at a time. So the lighting is consistent, the environment is consistent, the characters' faces are consistent, all of that is consistent to that scene, and that helps kind of homogenize the scene and makes it feel more cohesive to the reader, rather than doing a page, and then a page, and then a page, and then a page, and remixing all those colors and trying to match everything. I just try to paint everything in one go at the same time. So when I'm painting watercolor comics and I'm painting, say, 4 pages at a time, I can do 4 pages in about 4 days, which really isn't that bad. But it does require a fair amount of space. And those of you who have watched the channel for a while, you might remember me talking about painting on the floor a lot. It's because the floor is kind of the only place I have enough room to spread those pages out around me and actually be able to paint them all at once. So since I'm living in a rental right now, I don't have that kind of room. So I haven't been working on comics as much because I just don't have the room. My goal, though, after we move is to set up a big kind of U-shaped desk where I can work on multiple pages or even multiple projects at one time. So generally when I'm painting pages in in batch, the clothes don't change all that much. They would change scene to scene maybe, but not necessarily page to page. In this instance, Kira's wearing a different outfit in every one of these circles, so I'm painting a lot more of the clothes than I normally would be doing if I were painting the pages in batch, if that makes sense. I feel like that turned into mush, but that's okay. So for this, what I did is I painted all of the elements that are the same across these different watercolor rounds. I went ahead and painted that first, and I saved all of the unique elements until after that, and now I'm working on the unique elements. And then finally, after I finish painting everything, I will ink and add gouache to everything at the same time. So this process is it really does not scale for social media because yes, you are generating a lot of art at once, but you don't have anything to share for several days. And I kind of wish I wasn't talking about generating art for social media like that. A little part of my soul kind of died a little bit. I get the necessity for doing it, but I do feel that for slow art, it's just really not conducive. And it really has forced me into some habits and some choices that I'm kind of starting to regret. So I'm going to be talking about it a lot probably because I'd like to help figure out a way to start to change that, at least change that sort of mindset. So like I said a moment ago, I was basically getting everything caught up to the same point, painting the clothes, painting the patterns on the clothes, getting everything to the same point, and allowing everything to dry so that I could just ink everything and then re-gouache everything at the same time. Et voila! We are now just about finished with our Supervision Super Granulating Field Test with 2 bonus Daniel Smith Super Granulating colors. This is not meant to be all-inclusive, but it did give me a pretty good idea of whether or not this would work in my comic process. I can definitely say these will work for me. They don't make everything easier, but they make it a bit easier. So all of the Supervision colors were ordered off of AliExpress. I'll try to have links for you guys down in the description below. I'll also link my previous unboxing swatches for you guys if you're interested in just checking out the paints themselves. As you guys can see, this ended up being a lot of work, but I do think this was a really good way to test how well these will work for part of my comic making process. If any of you guys are fellow watercolor comic artists and you've got a trick, a tip, or a hack that I ought to know about, I would love to hear from you guys either down in the comments or over on my art-centric Discord server, The Paint Box. So I found that the Supervision Super Granulating Watercolors are actually a great tool for painting very easy, very atmospheric comic panel backgrounds. It doesn't work in lieu of an environment, but they're going to be panels where you want strong emotions, you want to convey a lot of emotion, and these super granulating colors do an excellent job of doing just that. I'm really looking forward to using these as backgrounds. Now, someone in the paint box, Maddie, suggested using these for clothing as well. I definitely think you could do that. That's definitely something worth exploring. But when I purchased these, what really drew me to them were those easy backgrounds. As a comic artist, I am always looking for effective but simple ways to get the job done. And as someone who has a tendency to overwork things, easy is often better than complicated. So I hope you guys found this field test helpful, useful, and informative. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and let me know how you use Supervision Super Granulating Colors. And just FYI, they are not the only super granulating watercolors on the market. Daniel Smith makes super granulating watercolors, Paul Rubens makes super granulating watercolors, and Van Gogh makes super granulating watercolors. And I have reviewed or swatched several of those here on the channel. So if you're interested in more super granulation, if you like what they have to offer, if you're excited about these kind of wild granulation effects, then I hope you guys will check out some of those other videos. I also recently purchased some of these super granulating colors from Aquarius, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that field test as well. This took so long to do. It took an entire week plus extra, plus ultra. It took just a week to draw everything, then about a week to paint everything, and then 3 or 4 days to edit everything. So this video took a lot of extra work, even though we managed to cram it down into such a short period of time, that I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, there are a few ways you can help me out, help this channel out, and help ensure that you see more videos like this one. One, you can hit like on the video. It tells YouTube that, hey, you actually enjoyed this content. Two, if you're not yet a subscriber, it would really mean a lot to me if you subscribed and if you click the bell notification. Even if you are a subscriber, do me a huge favor and check and make sure the bell notification is actually turned on. Several of my subscribers, several of my friends have told me that they're not getting notified when a new video drops. I release new videos twice a week and I do regular live streams, so you should regularly be seeing something from my channel. So if you're not, if it's been a while since you've seen any of my content, please check and make sure that YouTube is actually notifying you. If you want to keep up with everything, you don't want to miss anything, you can join me over on Twitter at twitter.com/natosoup, because I share what I create here over on Twitter. So plus, you know, extra stuff, talking about comics, talking about what I'm reading, anything like that, I share it over on Twitter. Plus, really cute kitten photos, speaking of the kitten. So if you like that, I hope you guys will join me over on Twitter. Another way you can help me out is by leaving a comment down in the description. I always read your comments. Sometimes I get kind of overwhelmed as somebody with ADHD and anxiety, so I don't always respond, but I always read your comments, and it really means a lot to me when you guys take time out of your day to say hi, to share what you're working on, or to just comment on what's going on in the video. And another way you can help this channel is by recommending it to friends. If you're on a forum where people do art, like you're on a Discord, like an art Discord, like the Paint Box, my art Discord, if you would share some of the links there, if you would recommend some of my tutorials there, if you would retweet them on occasion, that would really mean a lot to me, and it would be a huge, huge help. It would help me find more people who are interested in this kind of traditional media, comic-esque content. That is a huge way you can help. And the final way you can help, which might be the most rewarding for you in the end, is by joining me over on Patreon at patreon.com/natosoup, because I share early access videos, I share backer exclusive tutorials, and I share line arts for people to print and color. So if you like what I do, for just $2 a month, you can join me over on Patreon. Help support the work I'm doing here on the channel, because pretty much everything I review here, unless I disclose it at the start of the video, I purchase out of pocket using funds from Patreon. And that absolutely most definitely includes the Supervision Super Granulating Watercolors. So if you enjoy this kind of stuff, you want to see me review more art supplies from AliExpress, the best way to do that is by joining me over on Patreon, so I have the funds to do so. But that about wraps it up. You will find all relevant links to the Instagram, the Twitter, to my shop, to other videos that are referenced in this video and show notes. You'll find that all down in the description below. So if you're looking for more information, I hope you guys will check that out. And I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon. So I hope this field test was helpful, useful, and inspiring. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Bye, guys!